Okay, I think we are more or less good to go. People will start joining in. Wishing everyone a very, very good evening. Uh, Welcome to this Masterclass number 3 series from Flame School of Business, Flame University. I am Dr. Neeraj Mankad. I am the Assistant Dean Programs at Flame University and the faculty at Flame School of Business. And it's my privilege and pleasure to have a very young and dynamic colleague of mine, Anirudh Agrawal, who is one of our faculty members in the area of entrepreneurship, having take a session on open innovation for all of us. Before we begin, some of the names that I see in the attendee list, thank you for joining in the second and couple of them, I think, in the third time also. So clearly we've been doing something good to see you coming back. Many of you are joining in for the first time, and for all of you who are joining the masterclass for the first time, a quick half 30-second intro on masterclass. This is an initiative that we at Flame University decided to take, a short 1 hour session, interactive, wherein we wanted to look at how business concepts, from the classroom and from the research can be married to the corporate concepts that you keep on seeing. And what you see in all our masterclass is a very, very short and a crisp kind of a talk, but more towards what the concepts tell us and what we do in terms of the practice mode there. So before, without much ado, let me move on to today's masterclass. We have Professor Anirudh Agrawal with us today. Anirudh is an engineer, mechanical engineer from Lyon, France, and he has also submitted his thesis awaiting his defense at the Copenhagen Business School in Denmark. I think because of the COVID crisis, he is probably awaiting a call for the defense here. His teaching interests essentially are in the area of corporate strategy, corporate finance, entrepreneurship, and social entrepreneurship, essentially. He looks at technology and social entrepreneurship issues and tries to create some kind of holistic solutions around that. Anirudh has also taught at a number of business schools, both in India and abroad. He was with Frankfurt School of Finance in Germany. Incidentally, Anirudh is based in Germany at this point of time. His family was there. So, Anirudh, a good afternoon to you and not a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So he's an avid researcher, having published a lot of articles and presented a lot of articles in conferences and journals. And Anirudh is a fantastic human being. We have great fun together when he's here in the institute. And I'm so looking forward to listening to you, Anirudh. I'm sure the attendees are as well. I think as we begin this session, a thought came into my mind when I was going through your profile, Anirudh, that, what is an engineer, someone who's done about technology, looking at this aspect. Most, technologists and engineers are hardcore, in the area of the discipline that they are into, and they would look at innovation. But what is your take, and how did you really decide to get into this space of open innovation, which I think is an excellent understanding for all of us. So if I can, just request you to let us know before we begin what path you are in.
Well, thanks a lot, Neeraj, for this wonderful introduction. Look, as an engineer, I was always participating in robotic competitions, and we always used to wonder that why India is so slow in innovating, why the innovation in India is top driven. And being a mechanical engineer, I always used to question, me and my friends always used to consider, why can't we make a helicopter in India? Why do we have to buy it from the United States or from Russia? Why everything has to be driven by DRDO? And just looking at this question, that's an institutional mindset, which says that everything has to be top driven. You can challenge that institutional mindset. Uh, and open innovation is one of those ways that you challenge that mindset, wherein you can bring in innovators, not institutionally conditioned, but from outside, uh, take the innovations, integrate them into a system, and create a holistic product or service that can really change the way India as a competitive country can prosper, and the world in general can prosper. So open innovation, certainly not a panacea for all the problems, but it's certainly a tool that can be used by thinkers, innovators, and public officials to reimagine how a current system of innovation is designed and can be redesigned. That's how I see it, and that's how I'm going to, of course, carry on with the
Yeah,
conversation.
so please go ahead. For all the attendees who are here, before Anirudh begins his talk, we'll have a presentation of around 35-40 minutes and followed by question and answers. Please feel free to start typing your question and answers in the Q&A box there. Anirudh will be taking them once the presentation is over. So over to you, Anirudh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So before we begin, let's define innovation. What is innovation? Simple definition of innovation is a change in process, product, service, or organizational strategy that increases its performance. So for instance, if Tata Group is not doing very well in steel sector, but it sees an opportunity in automobile sector, it would buy a automobile company, or it would invest in automobile sector and try to increase its overall performance. That's an organizational innovation. Now, assuming Tata Motors is seeing an opportunity in electric vehicles. It is a dominant player in petroleum and fossil fuel vehicles, but it wants to move to electric vehicles. It would start investing, get a lot of engineers, and start developing an electric vehicle. So that's a product innovation that Tata Motors would do. The idea of this innovation is to increase the shareholder value of the Tata Motors. So the shareholders who are holding the Tata Trust share should see an overall increase in their share performance. So the idea of innovation is to really increase the performance of the company, to make the process of the company more efficient, to make the company more competitive. That's the reason why you do innovation. And so there are different ways of looking at innovation. You can look at the innovation. You can look at innovation, for instance, like an organization. Organization is structured in different systems. You have a marketing system, product system. You have a financial system. You have a product development system. You have an R&D system. You have a data collection system, data repository. All these structures are managed by people. So if you change the structure of the organization, there can be a delta increase in its performance. That's innovation. You can retrain your actors, the people working in the company, to increase the organizational performance. That is innovation. You can change the organizational boundary. For instance, you can buy a company. Tata Motors bought Jaguar, and it saw a huge change in its organizational performance and organizational boundary. That is a type of an innovation. Toyota very early on launched Toyota Prius, a hybrid vehicle that used electric power and as well as fossil fuel motor power, and developed a highly efficient vehicle very early on, before BMW or General Motors could latch into that segment of electric vehicles. And that was a huge disruptive innovation in the market. Overall, we saw the performance of Tata Motors increase substantially. So that is innovation. But there is a problem with the innovation, and that is the institutional mindset. Why? Because if you look at innovation, we think that only big companies can do innovation. Now, Toyota can do innovation, but I, a student in an engineering college, can I do an innovation? I, a student at an MBA college, can I do innovation? We sort of look at innovation as a big deal. Uh, Typically, we consider innovation as a very entitled activity. We need to get a PhD in engineering. We need to be in a very specialized research group that consists of scientists with multiple publications, multiple patents. Uh, and once we are in that kind of a group, only then can we do innovation. Mindset in especially people who consider military, who do military studies, they think the military innovation happens only by big research companies like Martin, Lockheed Martin, EADS, European Space Research Organization, or DRDO, uh, or HAL. Now, this is a very elitist mindset. Or IBM, for instance, does innovation, and then everyone else sort of, they take the bits and pieces. They are not capable of driving innovation. And the traditional innovation process is you put the people, you put the research scientists, you put the ideas into a funnel box. So this is the screening of ideas, and you have a lot of gatekeepers who are scientists, researchers, public budget allocators. You put the screening, and these people will screen the ideas. They would develop the project. Those projects would be turned into prototype products or services, and then they would be further funneled through multiple research studies, reliability studies, validity studies, into commercialized products. It's really it's a funnel, and the both sides of the funnel, the the beginning of the funnel and the end of the funnel are controlled by corporates or by institutions, and that the end user, who probably can be a normal consumer, has very little control on the process of the product development. And that basically is closed innovation. You really have no choice. What the company gives you, you have to take it. That's it. You as an innovator are a kind of overwhelmed by the idea of corporation. The corporation is this big giant black box who gives you products and services, and you have to take it. And there is no way that you can influence it. And that is the mindset uh, that is closed innovation. And the mindset that challenges it, it's called open innovation. For instance, if you look at this picture, the old man, he is Edison, Thomas Edison. He has over 1,000 individual patents. So still, there might be people, scientists who might have more patents than Edison, but they are not individual patents. While Edison has 1,000 individual authored patents. So what does it mean? A patent is a sticky concept. So once you have a patent, nobody can take it. You hold the patent, you hold the IP of the product or service that you have developed, and basically you can make money out of it, which looks very good. But do you really want the world to be like that, that people have patents and copyrights, and then they make money, and then you as an individual have to pay for it? That's a mindset, this institutional mindset that can be challenged. So one of the person who challenged this mindset was Richard Stallman. He is one of those activists, a software activist, who really focused on open source movement. And his idea was that software copyrights, software patents decrease the spread of software around the world. So software patenting, copyright started around 1980s, and that was a time when software development was still very elitist, a very closed center. But 1990s, when we started to get a lot of open source codes to develop over the top softwares, the software diffusion started to increase faster. And so people from all over the universities, geek coders in California, in New York, Boston, in IITs, in India, and in South Africa, where Elon Musk was based at that time, they all formed virtual communities and started creating small softwares that would challenge the existing copyrighted software, for instance, Microsoft 95. And those software became a dominant feature in labs, um, uh, and still worked upon. We call it, Firefox is one of those open source software which is not used anymore now because Chrome is way too good. But it challenged the supremacy of Internet Explorer around 1998 and 2002. Now, Boeing 747, we all know what is Boeing, and Boeing 747 is a fantastic airplane. It was launched in 1972-73 and is still used. It's a huge plane. And when we look at 747, we are awed by the beauty of it. We look at it and said, can anyone make it? But mind you, uh, Boeing 747 was probably the pinnacle of aviation. But before Boeing 747 was launched, there were aviation enthusiasts, students like you, like me, professors, people from wealthy families who were innovating and trying to fly a machine that is heavier than air into the air using a motive power. A motive power is an engine. And we know that Wright brothers, based out of the United States, succeeded in their first flight. So here you see, and users from all over the world trying to form a community and create an innovation that never existed. They created an innovation, and that innovation was lashed on by a big corporate house, and it became a kind of a monstrous challenge to ever beat it again. And so really, we have to reimagine the world from the story of Wright brothers and Boeing 747. Keep those two things in mind and think, can we again have small innovations that can that can turn into a really big, fantastic product that can solve global problems, really? Because we, at this moment, are facing far stiffer global problems, starting from COVID-19 to climate change, sustainability, um, and the sustenance of human life. Can we really look at a different form of innovation and challenge those global problems? Now, another one, we recently, SpaceX launched human beings into ISS. The uniqueness of SpaceX was that it was a private enterprise that put human beings inside a spacecraft and put that into space. Before that, space travel was wholly monopolized by the governments. So you had the Chinese government, the Russians, the Europeans, and the Americans. These four governments were really, they had completely monopolized the space exploration, and nobody else could get into that domain. But here is one. Then there was this recent in 2008, 2009. There was this challenge called X Foundation. So X Foundation is a challenge where they give you global problems, most difficult global problems. And one of the global problems that they gave was to send human beings into space in cheapest possible ways. And number of companies took part, and the university team from TU Delft won the prize to send human beings into space. And probably some of their innovations were bought by SpaceX. And so SpaceX recently sent human beings to space. Now, this idea of sending human beings to space by a private company was completely unthoughtful. Like, imagine the days of Cold War. You have Cold War was between 1950s until the early 1990s, when the USSR broke apart, and everything was closed. Space was one of the areas where each USSR and America was trying to dominate, and there was no way. And the idea that a private player can be a dominating player in this Cold War of deciding space supremacy was unthoughtful. But now, 30 years after the end of Cold War, we have SpaceX, a private company that started in 2003. Imagine, started in 2003. No, It started in 2003 and was able to send a human being into space. And the last time United States of America sent a human being to space was 2010, when they stopped their spacecraft program. So it's again, it took 10 years for a private player to become a dominating player in the space industry. And with the success of SpaceX, you have another company that is coming up that is called Blue Origin by Amazon, which is trying to do the same thing, sending satellites to space, sending human beings to space, and probably to Mars. Discuss about it now. Another issue with closed innovation is the ivory tower. We are nurtured to believe that knowledge rests with universities. You go to Harvard and you would get the knowledge that Harvard would give you. You cannot get it outside. Similarly, you go to Oxford, the knowledge that Oxford program would give you will not get it outside. Now that is a closed mindset. And now in the last 10 years, you have multiple programs such as Udemy, Coursera, open educational resources, YouTube, where you can get vast amount of knowledge that you probably will never get it from an elitist institution and ivory towers. In YouTube, you can basically learn anything and everything you want to learn. People, the best of the best people, put their knowledge, their sticky knowledge on YouTube, on Udemy, on Coursera, for everyone to learn. And that's a way, that's a mindset. That's a change in mindset. The earlier mindset was, in order to learn anything, you have to go to a university. Well, that's not true anymore. You can learn anything and everything sitting anywhere in the world and watching the videos and doing your homework, basically. And so the idea is to change the mindset and look at the world differently, and that is the essence of open innovation. So what is open innovation? Paradigm that assumes that firms can and should use external ideas, internal ideas, new paths to market in order to improve the firm performance. So for instance, if you look at Apple. Now, Apple is a hybrid open innovation software. It is not completely open innovation, it's hybrid. You have a closed source platform, which is iOS, and you have apps that people develop and then people can use it. So you have a closed, it's a hybrid system. Earlier, if you look at the Microsoft 95 or Mac OS 1997, 98, 2000, they were all closed. Very few people had access to develop software for these companies. But now, with the new technology, you can basically, anyone can write an app, publish it on the OS platform on iTunes, and people can download those apps and use those apps on a well-defined platform. And that is an essence of open innovation. Open innovation is not just limiting yourself to a certain source of knowledge, but rather having an open mind, opening your mind and finding knowledge from multiple sources, and then creating the best product or service for your consumers. That is an essence of open innovation. It's challenging the current mindset. One fine example of open innovation is the Mars Challenge. NASA, for instance, every year has a Mars Challenge wherein they call school students, university students to make projects of colonizing Mars. Now imagine, Mars does not have any oxygen, Mars has no vegetation, Mars has no water. And you would want to put human beings into Mars. Now, how can you do that? What kind of design, engineering structures would you need such that there is water, there is vegetation, there is food for people to live for 6 months, there is oxygen for people to live for 6 months. Now, that kind of a problem is a difficult problem to solve. And NASA has taken upon itself to invite researchers, students, both in a gamified way and also in a research-oriented way, to solve problems, to develop engineering structures that can be placed on Mars, that can sustain human life for 6 months. And that's an interesting challenge. So open innovation in a nutshell is really to challenge a mindset that says that only few people have the power to innovate. Open innovation is about people, open innovation is democratizing innovation. Everyone has the power to innovate. All they need is a right platform wherein they can be contributors to the innovation process and help in the development of a reliable product or service. And that is a unique movement. And companies that are adopting open innovation are succeeding in many ways in their overall outlook, or overall competitive outlook. So typically, in a closed innovation funnel, you would have ideas and people at the starting, and products and services in the at the end. And there is no way, and the whole process is extremely structured and closed, and there is no way one can get a peep into this whole process during the time of proof of concept, manufacturing, and the launch of product. While in the case of open innovation, you still have the funnel, but the funnel is not closed. The funnel is open. So everywhere and at every step of the innovation cycle, you're open to ideas. You're open to rethinking and readaptation and changing the ideas in order to get the best product or service. So it's really the way you look at the whole innovation process. It is more democratized. The people have the power to contribute in the innovation process. They need the right platform for sure. And we are seeing unique products and services getting created, which wasn't the case before. And we're seeing a lot of institutions that thought that they are untouchable are getting disrupted. For instance, education and space technology. Fun example is Nokia, Apple, Android. So Nokia was a market leader up until 2008, and Nokia source code was completely closed. Nobody had idea what Symbian does. Symbian was one of the software that Nokia used on its phones, and Nokia was like, we are the market leader, nobody can touch it. Our software is a source code, is a real IP, and it's unbeatable. Nobody can match that software. And then we had in 2007, 2008, we had Apple launching its first or second phone. The uniqueness of Apple phone was it was a hybrid system. That is, the source code was of the software iOS was really with Apple company, but it opened the development of apps to people. It incentivized initially for people to develop apps and software and sell those software on its platform. So it really democratized the whole system of innovation in telecommunication technology, and that really changed the way telecommunication was to after 2008. In 2010-11, we saw the rise of Android. Android was completely open. It was open. Anyone can change the source code of Android, and anyone can write programs for Android. So Android was completely different from Apple iOS. And we saw that companies around the world, Samsung, LG, Lenovo, Motorola, everyone used Android. It was completely democratized. and they rewrote the code of Android. And now Android holds 76% of the market. And while iOS has less than 20% of the market for cell phones. So we see right in front of our eyes how open innovation, where users have the power to change the characteristics of the platform or use the existing platform, bringing their own innovation, can influence the overall trajectory of the company in the long run. Now, another great example of open innovation is India Stack. It's still in development, but Indian government under Mr. Modi, both right and left of the political ideology, I must say, has done a fantastic job in giving us, the Indians, a fantastic first world infrastructure of technology, where we individuals, each of us, can develop softwares and technologies that can influence our digital journey. Fine example that I come to me is Paytm. Now, Paytm was a closed technology up until 2017, when UPI was democratized by the Indian government. So Paytm was the market leader. Everyone thought Paytm is the next $100 billion company, and it was really monopolizing the way payments were done in India, because they had the best technology at the time. Nobody knew what Paytm is doing, and there were few smaller players coming into the market, like TruePay. A friend of mine launched this company during demonetization. But it just could not compete with Paytm at that time. Then in 2017, Indian government democratized UPI. Now, what happened with UPI was basically anybody can use UPI ID and send or receive money. It really changed the way e-commerce, both B2B and B2C, was done. And I see a fantastic future for India in fintech with the use of UPI. And UPI is one of those infrastructure elements that Indian government gave us, that we as individuals can use the APIs of UPI and develop our own fintech products and services to cater to the Indian masses and their needs. Open innovation banking sector is very interesting. The first company in India to have open innovation in the banking sector was Yes Bank. They launched their APIs for outside users to develop applications that can improve the efficiency of the Yes Bank. And then we have banks like HDFC. They have their own open banking systems. ICICI has its own. So they have multiple APIs which users and developers can use and create fintech solutions to help the customers better their services, improve their performance, which is quite innovative. Because imagine 20 years back, there was hardly anyone letting customers change the way banking was done. Banking was a very closed system. It's a very closed traditional industry where only the RBI had the power to change how the banking was done. But now, 2020, the banks are sharing their APIs. So SBI is sharing its APIs. HDFC, ICICI, Yes Bank, they're sharing their APIs for letting us users to develop applications that can help us improve our performance if we are having small e-commerce company or a small business, or we can use these APIs to develop products and services for third party, helping us grow as the bank grows. It's a win-win for all of us. I think it's a fantastic setup that the Indian government is doing. And not every country is doing, mind you. I mean, there must be Europeans, America, China, Russia, and India. We may not be the best, but we are up there against the best. Another interesting technology, the application of innovation strategy is Narendra Modi app. Now, I'm not supporting the political ideology, but I think we should appreciate the right things that are done by the government. And I think Narendra Modi app is a step in that direction, where our Prime Minister is asking users feedback into policy decisions or in his speeches. And I think it's a fantastic example of how leaders are using open innovation strategy, where they're bringing in people from, instead of just focusing on bureaucrats to develop strategy articles or policy papers. Mr. Modi is trying to democratize policy making by asking users their feedback on his app. And similarly, if you look at the Arogya Setu app for COVID-19, it's not driven by a top bureaucrat. It's really driven by people. So people are driving this app. So everyone who is COVID infected has to log in his GPS codes and stuff like that. And that information is shared with everyone, so they know are they in the danger zone or not. And I think it's a user-driven innovation, and it's fantastic. It can have multiple applications in other areas, but it's a very good starting. It's a very good and open mindset that the government is having. We should appreciate it. Now, to sum up my lecture, now every strategy has to have a logic. I again repeat, whatever new concepts you learn, you need to have a logic. And one of the logic that justifies open innovation is theory of weak ties. Theory of weak ties was proposed by Granovetter in 1973, which basically says that you don't learn from your close group. You learn from your from people you meet in parties, people you meet in networks, small networks. So for instance, I am a professor at Flame University, and I have a very close group of colleagues, and it's difficult for us as a close group of colleagues to create a unique research article. But if I go to a conference, let's say Academy of Management, which is top one for us, and we meet a professor there, and there, if our ideas match, we have a possibility to collaborate and think of a new disruptive idea or a managerial theory. So it's really, so the idea here is that the disruptive ideas don't come in a closed box. Disruptive ideas can come from outside the box. You have to look outside in your weak ties. So really your small network, people you play golf with, or people you play cricket with. If you engage in a business conversation, you might get an interesting business idea from therein, then really looking in your closed box. And this weak tie theory justifies open innovation logically. So open innovation, not just a fad that somebody says, hence open innovation is good. It is really justified through a theoretically sound theory, which is weak ties by Granovetter. So open innovation for India, I think I'm open to discussion on this. We can have a greater discussion with Professor Neeraj and everyone else. And what can India do to integrate open innovation in Indian context? Okay, I end my conversation here, and we'll have discussion where we'll elaborate on some of the points I discussed here. Yes, Neeraj, I'm done with it.
Thank you, Anirudh. I think it was a fantastic overview and understanding on open innovation and the manner in which, in my trying to sum up in my words, is perhaps looking at the wisdom of crowds is what we are trying to. I would like to sum it up as, taking on from the wisdom of the crowd is what open innovation would perhaps mean to me. And I think it pretty sums it much up why we should look at open innovation. Some interesting questions, I think, Anirudh, have come up. And I find one of them pretty, for us, many of us who are in the corporates, the opportunity to innovate may not really be, we don't work in R&D labs, or we don't work we work as some different jobs in the corporate. But I think Arun has an excellent question, that how would open innovation be different from entrepreneurship? I think from a definition perspective, from where do you see open innovation fitting into an entrepreneurship?
Look, open innovation, if you look at the traditional definition, it's about taking innovation both from inside the company, from multiple different sources, right. And not just so, traditional corporations are silos into functions, R&D function, marketing function.
Sorry, can you look at that, because your voice was breaking? Yeah, better now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, much better.
Great. So if you look at traditional corporations, it's very structurally functioned. So you have an R&D function, you have a marketing function, you have a finance function, you have a treasury function, operations function, and really And so in this, that in the traditional sense, yes, it's difficult for an entrepreneur to be called open innovation. But if you look at the definition of open innovation, it basically says that take ideas from everywhere. You take the ideas from everywhere. So obviously, if somebody is a product manager in a marketing department and he has a very good idea, he may well talk to somebody in the R&D department and create a product or a project report, and send it to the budgetary allocation in the financial department to see if the project can be financed for marketing. And so certainly it is possible to call entrepreneurship as open innovation. Really, but if
Yeah.
you look at I mean I totally agree, but I would call open innovation entrepreneurship as one of the facets of open innovation. uh, Mind you, entrepreneurship is, it's hard, you know. In India we have promoter driven companies, so we have promoter driven, so typically promoters take the call if they want to invest in a certain sector or not, which isn't the case in European or American companies, because they're conglomerates and multinationals. So individuals have the power to take the initiative to invest in one country, and they can be manager of the country, uh, which isn't the case in our case, because we are not so internationally driven at the moment, and the promoters take a lot of risk and lot of initiative in driving the direction of the company. Entrepreneurship is certainly interesting, but we are not seeing so much entrepreneurship happening in India at the moment, as much as we see promoter interest being driven by promoter sons,
Yeah, I think
family members.
perhaps a couple of things, if I can just take a cue from what you said, Anirudh, that if we look at in entrepreneurship and open innovation, my two bits perhaps here would be the manner in which Google promotes entrepreneurs within the organization itself, right? The way in which people come up with some kinds of new innovations on their own, looking at the crowd. One way that I recently, not recently, about 7 to 8 years ago, we had a student who was studying MBA during the day, but he was a coder in the night. So he was. So I think you are an entrepreneur. You do it for your organization, creating new stuff, but at the same time you're using principles of open innovation. And by the way, this is perhaps a good time to put in one of the masterclass series that we would be having. I think it's about 2 weeks from now, is going to talk about entrepreneurs. So Arun, if you are interested in this topic, so one of our faculty is going to talk about how entrepreneurship can be created in organizations. So we'll take that up. But yeah, true. I think one of the other issues, I think, that Anirudh, a couple of questions are trying to look at is on the role that constraints play. So Sajid is asking a question on the fact that most of so everything has been built for less than 10% of our population. So how would you look at open innovation playing an important part in this context?
Sajid, I would say it's a fantastic question. I think I agree with you that the world has been designed to cater to the upper middle class and the rich, and there is certainly a left out population that needs that policymakers have to address, and open innovation is one such ways. So if you look at if you now things have more democratized. So if you look at the education now, basically anything, every professor at Harvard University have lectures online. So you can go to edX, Coursera, and the lecture, the professors themselves have put in their lectures online, and any student from anywhere in the world, whether rich or poor, can access to those lectures and learn the best in the world. So that's one fine example where we are seeing the application of open innovation, where people basically can put in their resources and democratize it for everyone. Udemy. So Udemy has multiple scholarship programs. So people can log into Udemy and they can apply for scholarship and get free lectures, free courses, best courses on Udemy. So that's also an example where the poorest are having access to resources, which was not possible 20 years back. Mind you, poor had absolutely no access to the best of the technologies, which they are having access now. And I totally agree. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, I think open innovation and SDGs have a strong relation. And Sustainable Development Goals are, in essence, define the poverty, the 90% bottom of the pyramid, is pretty much captured by Sustainable Development Goals. And open innovation certainly has a role to play in alleviating the issues addressed in Sustainable Development Goals. So I congratulate. It's a fantastic question. I totally agree with you that open innovation has a role to play
I think
in solving the problem.
one of the examples that I could get across here is because you talked about uh, open innovation, and this was I was at IIT sometime in 2006 or seven. There was this there's this issue about the developing countries having a different set of healthcare problems, and if you look at the pharmaceutical companies, the majority of the drugs which were being innovated were in the area of hypertension or diabetes or heart diseases and so on and so forth, because that's where the as Anirudh mentioned, the major part of the corporation market was coming in from. But no one looked at, let's say, the issue of malaria in India, or the countries like India, Brazil, where you had so many diseases here, which had a large base in terms of the people there, but there was less research done for them. And that's when very aptly, I remember there was a project which the Department of Science and Technology, DST, had run, which was called the OSDD, which was the Open Source Drug Discovery Program. So it was an excellent network of mathematicians, biologists, biotechnologists. You had some business guys coming in, because it was more like an open Wikipedia, if you may, or rather more an open Linux that they had started for drug discovery. And then it was an excellent example, Sajid, on how you could look at creating what Anirudh mentioned as sustainable models for even the part of the population there. What's requiring is the concept of open innovation coming in. I thought I'll just uh,
I think
example which came to
Neeraj,
mind when we were there at IT and
Neeraj,
worked
fantastic
with them
example. I
for
think
some time.
this is a beautiful example that you said. I read about it.
Yes, I
Maybe
think
we can write a case about it. I think it's a fantastic example. And
OSD was good.
drugs, medicines is a major issue, because what happens if you look at the contract. So the FAS contract by United States government went to four big pharmaceutical companies: Merck, Pfizer, and two American companies.
Right.
Only four companies got this contract from the United States government, and these companies will basically file patents,
Right.
and charge from the national government very high prices for coronavirus.
I think
And and so, how do we break that monopoly? And open innovation is one such way to break that monopoly, where countries like India can have low-cost drugs to address the issues of coronavirus here in India. But and so certainly, how do we do that? It's a very difficult, because at the moment the knowledge on coronavirus is very limited, and we really need to know what kind of molecules will be there in the drug, and what molecules. So
as we
we have
say
no.
this, yeah, as we say this, Anirudh, there are, as I know, quite a few numbers of researchers who are working together, in this open innovation kind of a model, trying to look at this problem. But I think one interesting question that Peter is asking here is about obstacles to innovation culture. What do you think specifically to India, perhaps, and to larger organizations? What kind of obstacles you think one could have, and how would one overcome these?
That's a great question. Certainly I think we are, as a society, we don't have a big enough market to absorb new innovations. We really want tried and tested innovations in the market. So once the innovation has been tried and tested in America and Europe or in China, we would buy them, or and sell them in India, because the market is not mature enough to accept new things. They're risk averse. at the moment. We are certainly innovative, but we are risk averse, and that really stalls the launch of new products and services. Um, that's one thing I see a major issue in India. Um, a lot of industries in India closed. So if you look at the innovation in United States, it's really military driven. Internet was military driven. Air Force, space industry was military driven. Um, aircraft industry was really military driven. And so what happened? The military gets the budget. It creates products and services, creates technology infrastructure, and that is democratized in the people, among the people. While in our case, the military innovation stays with DRDO. We are not democratizing it for people to use and develop technologies on it. So one example, if you look at the Israeli technologies, so Israel Signet, the signal unit, the signal processing unit of Israeli military, they hire 19 to 22-year-old kids. They train them for 4 or 5 years into their Signet technologies. They know the best internet technologies ever available to crack codes, to understand security systems and the technology. When they come out of their military service from the Signet, they already know the best, and then they develop applications on top of it. So the Israeli Signet engineers and graduates, they know each other, they know the best technology. When they graduate, they are basically their technologies are basically being adopted by every bank in the world now. In our case, our Signet guys are employed forever for all their life. They come out of the military when they retire. So basically, the democratization of innovation is not happening in India as it should happen. So military is one thing, space is another thing. Indian government has not democratized space as much as it should. Many of our research institutions do not have industry linkage, or they do not let people to use the technology developed in the lab and then immediately market it. That system, that infrastructure where at a CSIR, one of the top Indian industrial labs, I develop a technology, then I have an immediate way to create a company and also hold my position as a researcher in the lab, because I don't want to lose that job, and have the freedom to create a company, use that technology, and then create a product and service around it and sell in the market. That freedom I don't have. And if I can have an industrial player who can partially fund it and take control of it, I think it's good. But we are just not doing that. I'm sure it will happen, but it's not happening at the moment.
Right. So I think one more insight that I'd like to point out here is that, Peter, there is a lot happening, though in very few quarters in the Indian sense. Corporates, and there's a couple of questions, Anirudh, I think we should take this up next. And why is the Indian corporate lacking in innovation, and what should it do? Because your first question was, talking about innovation. So why is India lacking in innovation, and what an individual corporate should be doing?
That's a great question. I mean, my understanding is that we we need to create more professional structures that help in innovation, absorbing innovation. We need more trained people in the organizations who understand innovation, who understand the market needs, and drive the corporate strategy in adopting new innovation. I think at the board level, we simply don't have enough people who really understand the innovation and the market needs and can drive it. We have too many IT engineers who are at the back end, who are going into the front end, but we don't have really thought leaders in industry who understand the market need, who have the capability to develop product. It's a time-consuming process. Indian government is investing a lot, and we will see that happening 5 years down the line. But at the moment, I see that we just don't have enough people to really drive the innovation at the board level, because the board is the one who will drive the innovation
at the same time, Anirudh, a lot of corporates have realized this issue, and just for all of the attendees here, some some examples. For instance, the Tata Group is having their own open innovation wing altogether for the internal Tata companies. So it's called Tata Innocentric, if I'm not wrong, and they are the ones who are actually promoting this open innovation culture within the group companies, and making sure that live projects come up, and connecting with the ecosystem and getting that. So like Anirudh says, there has been the government push. There has been corporates who are also looking at putting their best foot forward when it comes to creating a culture. But yeah, you rightly mentioned it will take 5 years or perhaps more for us to see that coming up.
Yeah, the problem in India is that if you are very well trained in technology, American companies hire you. They take you to America. You get trained in India and you get a job in America and you basically leave India. And so, बिचारे क्या करें?
True. So Nitesh has an interesting question. How do we drive innovation in an organization amongst operational person performing regular daily activities? So I think he's trying to figure out, in the regular course of operations that an organization has, how do you fit this innovation agenda, maybe?
I try to answer it, then you also chip in. When I was a student, this is Japanese philosophy, total quality management. So TQM, you have in the TQM you had the lowest possible individual in the company was empowered to ensure that uska jo kaam hai, that is the most efficient, and he has the power to decide what to do in order to make his work mostly efficient, and then let his supervisor know कि ये कमी है, can you please help me out to improve this? If you do this, my process will improve. So the TQM philosophy of Japan is still used at the shop floor in most manufacturing companies. That philosophy from the manufacturing has to go into operations, in my humble opinion, where an individual is empowered to suggest how to improve a given process of delivering an operational bottlenecks, solving the operational bottlenecks. I think that philosophy from manufacturing to operations has to percolate, and I think that is my answer to this question.
Yeah, I think true. So another interesting question, and this is related to open innovation and the industries that it is applicable in. Do you think that, Arun is asking the question, how flexible is open innovation with respect to industries that is applicable in? I think, Anirudh, if I may chip in here,
yes, sir.
Let me give Arun some wide spectrum of examples. There is this company called Gold Mart, which was a gold mining company based in Canada, which started in 2000. 2000 is when it started the Open Innovation Challenge. You had Procter and Gamble, which I guess it was Connect and Develop, or one of the it launched. So you have an FMCG company, you had a gold mining company, technology companies all of us know are there in open innovation. The entire Tata Group, which includes Tisco, rather now Tata Steel, Tata Motors, all of them have gone into open innovation. So I think my view is that it's perhaps industry agnostic, if I may. But Anirudh, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, if you look at the steel industry, it's really, you have the raw material, you have a processor, and you have a finished product, and it's, one has to really look at it, what kind of where do you put in the open innovation on the product side. On the service side and operational side, certainly you can have open innovation. So really one has to really break it down industry wise. If you look at the electric vehicles now, it's amazing. So if you look at the case of Bolt by General Motors and Tesla by Elon Musk, now General Motors cash rich, they can really raise capital from multiple sources compared to a rookie entrepreneur like Elon Musk. But somehow Tesla is doing far better than Bolt by GM. And it really goes to the philosophy, because from the beginning, Elon Musk ensured that the technologies he's developing are open, are open core. So people can really chip in, the developers can really chip in, use the technologies of the Tesla motors, and then create their own innovative products or services of the technologies that Tesla is driven. And we see a really good example of how Tesla is really driving forth on the product side, really coming up with extremely high performance intensive vehicles and efficient batteries. Because could be because they're really focusing on open innovation. They're letting people to develop. They're really open on that side. At least that's what Elon Musk said in multiple interviews on electric vehicles. Uh, Now you compare it with BMW, for instance. Again, very close. We have no clue what BMW is doing on the electric vehicle side. The competitive advantage of BMW was it was a mechanical car. You love the mechanics of BMW and not the electronics of BMW. And so on the mechanic side, you basically have no, you don't have a competitive advantage compared to electric vehicle, because electric vehicle doesn't have mechanics than a BMW has.
So I think,
So
Anirudh, sorry, but we are short of time, so I'm just going to take just one or maybe two questions if you are okay.
pleasure is
Uh,
mine.
One of them is about operationalizing open innovation. So, as I'm working in a research organization, Santosh is asking, facing an issue of execution of any innovative idea. So, could you suggest how to boost confidence levels?
I think one of the best ways is you look at the innovation funnel. So what is innovation? Innovation funnel is a framework, uh, a policy document. So you really have to have a policy document, an innovation funnel, and that policy document should encourage uh, different types of innovators to come in. Your company has to be driven by a certain policy. So the policy document is a funnel that lets people in and out, that lets products and services get selected for marketable products and services. So you really have to think through how would you create a policy of R&D that lets that lets people with ideas or products and or nascent, that word is nascent products and services, chip in from sideways into the development of the real product and service. So for instance, if you see a patent, you see a couple of patents, you're developing, let's say you're developing electric motor, and and you have a very strict closed R&D department, and you see 5 or 6 patents in France. But the person who has these 5 or 6 patents relates to your technology. Uh, can you buy that person? Can you buy those patents? Or can you have that person in your company? That's one way of approaching open innovation and giving them the right incentive to join your company instead of only focusing on your scientists, not letting outside people join in. That's how you can actually create an open innovation environment.
Right.
Another thing is, may I add, is scientometrics. So scientometrics is an interesting field to measure innovation. And you can have scientometric databases, use those to understand where the innovations are happening. Can you buy it? Can you license it from outside? And then develop your innovation houses.
Right. So yeah, thank you. I think we've exceeded our time. Thanks for the vast number of questions. We still have quite a few, and I would suggest that we will get back to you with these questions. We'll send it to Anirudh, and he can that's what we do in our masterclass series. We'll make sure that the answers come back to you. Thank you, all of you. Thanks, a special really thanks to my colleague Anirudh for having taken this session, and thank you, Anirudh. Despite your publication
Thank,
heavy
thank
schedule.
you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Namaste. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourself and your
Thank
parents. Very
all
important.
of you, and do join in for our next webinar, masterclass series, Effectuation for Tomorrow's Uncertain Times, by Darshan Doshi, who is the director of the Flame Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Effectuation is a very critical researched and effective method that entrepreneurs use in order to scale businesses. And Darshan, with his large background coming in essentially from the entrepreneurship domain, is a good speaker for this topic. So looking forward to having all of you here back next week on June 11th. And once again, a great thank you to Anirudh. Have a
Thank you.
good evening, a good weekend, and stay safe. Thanks.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.